ダスクダイバー2
Hey, what's up, man?
混論霊道
The controller's not working. Hold on.
お決まりですか？お買い上げありがとうございます。
How's it going? I'm, pissed off at that Tales news. Because they said it's the same fucking game that's on PC right now. It's still locked at 30 FPS. It's just... I'm so tired of being a Tales fan. I really am. They just don't care. And people are getting excited for it too. It's the same game! They're not even trying to uncap the frame rate. Like, come on. At least make it seem like you care. I'm getting sick of it. I'm gonna have to start playing those games on emulator, since they clearly don't give a shit. They do not care at all. It's 30 FPS on everything. It's the exact same game you can get on PC. I don't even really want to play the game again. It's just the principle of it pisses me off. They just don't care. I wish I could say I was still proud to be a Tales fan. I'm not. It's embarrassing. It is. How little care they have. I've been playing those games for like such a long time. It frustrates me. That's why I'm glad there's stuff like this game. Game is at least a partial replacement.
言いたかったか。
逃がさないと。
ほらよ。
行くな。逃がさない。倒れなさい。
ああ、そらだか、そら。逃がさないと。誰が。
そこよ。
ぶっ飛ばされたいか。
私が行く。逃がさないと。はっ、行くな。
Well, if they think it's popular, then why don't they put
ジ
effort
ョーちゃ
into
ん
the
大
port?
丈夫か。
Supposed to be a Tails thing, what, like, 15th our time? I wonder what they're going to announce. I mean, it can't be worse than what they announced today. Like, hey, here's that same trash port that's worse than the GameCube version. We're going to sell that to you again. We haven't sold that to you enough. We have, like, other games you can't play anymore. We won't give you those. We're going to give you the same game again. And we're not even going to make it a good version. It's just fucking embarrassing. It is. I feel increasingly embarrassed to be a Tales fan. Just the state it's in. How little they seem to care. It bothers me. So I've definitely put my effort into trying to, promote Tales. My efforts are not being rewarded at all. None of us. Sucks when you feel like, people like me do more for it than the developers do. Vesperia's on the Switch, yes. It's a pretty good port. Just had stability issues when it came out, but they've since fixed that, which was admittedly a pretty big problem with that game, because, you know, it's an old school JRPG, so there's no autosaves or checkpoints or anything, so that game would crash. You could lose a lot of your progress. Once they fix that, it's not a bad way to play the game. It could be worse.
ユモ様、航路はどう行くのでしょう。遠かったら飛んでいきますか。すぐ近くだから。
It's just the only JRPG series I like. I don't like Final Fantasy. I tried Final Fantasy VII Remake. I just hated the combat. It just wasn't fun to me. I tried Stranger of Paradise. That game was okay, but it just felt like worse Neo. It just felt like worse Neo. And it had the same problems as the first Neo, the terrible balancing and artificial difficulty. I got really frustrated playing that game. I just don't like Final Fantasy. Dragon Quest is all turn-based, Persona is turn-based. Ys I do like Ys. Ys is like the only other one I really care about. Final Fantasy VII Remake was just boring. I tried to like that game. It's just not fun. I just didn't like the combat. It just wasn't enjoyable. Too much forced walking sections and stuff. It's just... I didn't like the pacing, I didn't like the combat. I tried to like that game, but... Maybe Final Fantasy 16 will be something I could tolerate playing. The 7 Remake was just boring. I also don't have any nostalgia for the original game, so that doesn't help either. I did not grow up with it, like most most people my age did, so
全然準備
that doesn't help things either.
遅からない
I don't have
逃がすものか危ないよブレイクホイールいただきいかないよさようなら実は倒れなさいここに
Yep, that's fine. It's fine if they don't. Why people care about my opinion so much? Like, I'm just a normal guy. I just don't like Final Fantasy. I don't. I tried 7 Remake. It just didn't hook me at all. Just didn't like the combat. It felt like worse Tales. And like, just weird MMO style to it. I just didn't like it. The dodge was not invincible. It just felt clunky. And I just have no attachment to that game in general, so I kind of just judged it on what it is to me. Just another JRPG. That's all I really had to judge it on. I did try Final Fantasy VII, the original, when it came out. I had a friend in middle school who let me borrow the PC version. I just thought the game was boring. I thought it was really boring. Like, I didn't like the graphics. I didn't like the gameplay. The music was like the only thing I liked about it. No, I never really tried Final Fantasy again after that. I'm like, I just don't really not feeling this game at all.
店長様は人使い荒いですね。さすが上に立つお方。次は
I
どうやって
understand
行くの
why
で
it's
すか？
popular. It's just I just don't care
そう
for
だ
it.
な。歩きだとさすがに遠い距離だから。
地下鉄6番出口から地下鉄に乗ろう。
Actually, I hated the graphics of the original Final Fantasy, so I thought the sprites looked better, which they do. The old Final Fantasy games, the pre-7 ones, like, still hold up graphically.
あそこから事務所に入れるぞ。
Final Fantasy VII has aged like milk, which is why they're remaking it, of course. But I just my take on Final Fantasy VII is it didn't look good when it came out. Really, the main draw was the CG cutscenes, which for the time were really good. You didn't really get production values like that in video games at the time. I can give it that. I thought the in-game graphics, I just didn't like it. It's like the whole chibi thing worked better. You know, that, to be fair, that's how Final Fantasy was at the time. That kind of style just works better in pixel art. You try to make it 3D, I just felt like they looked like melted Legos. Like, imagine if Final Fantasy VII was supposed to be on the N64, but they couldn't get the game to fit on the cartridges. Like, imagine like what that would have changed with the game industry as a whole. That was definitely the worst thing, is like when Final Fantasy VII got popular and JRPGs were more popular as a whole, outside of Japan. If you had an N64, you couldn't play any of those games. like pretty much immediately after Final Fantasy VII came out, there was a huge like increase in how many JRPGs were releasing. Like, none of them were on the N64. It was a big deal if we got even one of them. It's like this huge deal. What was that game called? Eidon Chronicles? That game is trash. It like can't compare to Final Fantasy VII in any way, but there was a lot of hype for it, at least from publications and stuff, because it was a JRPG on N64. Like, it wasn't anything remarkable about that game at all, even though I don't care for Final Fantasy VII. Can't deny that game is well made. They hyped up that game a lot. Just because, like, hey, there were a ton of JRPGs on the NES and SNES. Then the N64 came out, and that genre just became a dead one. Kind of like overnight. People think the JRPG situation is bad now. You could imagine being a N64 owner that wasn't rich enough to also have a PlayStation. That shit was dire. It got a little bit better with the GameCube. You know, we had Tales of Symphonia, which is like the heavy hitter, of course. That still, even when the GameCube came out, it still was pretty much. If you like RPGs, having a Nintendo console was not wise.
そうからすると実戦用だな。この方を見るのは久しぶりだな。
英王の言った通り、この型番が実戦に使われたのは数百年前のことだね。よく見ると、攻撃型のようだね。油断するんじゃないよ。だが確かに、その話のこいつが、かつての風船城防衛戦に使われてたのか。
どうでもいいさ。敵意がある以上、ぶっ壊すしかねえな。
It's kind of ironic now, like, the Switch has most RPGs any Nintendo console has had since the SNES. You're eating good if you like JRPGs, whether you like turn-based or action, strategy RPGs. Like they have a ton of them on there. It didn't used to always be that way. Game Boy Advance was probably a pretty close contender. There were a lot of JRPGs on there. I feel like the Wii, like the GameCube before it, in terms of JRPGs, was heavily carried by Tales, because they did put out like two Tales games on the Wii. But there weren't that many others. Square pretty much didn't bother with Final Fantasy on there at all. There was Crystal Chronicles on GameCube, which is like a spin-off. Not the thing that people wanted. There are people who like that game, but it wasn't like a mainline installment. Wii wasn't too great for JRPGs either.
早く追いつこう。
But the Switch has an insane amount. It's crazy how many it has, and like all different kinds too. Not just turn-based, not just Tales style. They have action RPGs. They have turn-based. They have strategy RPGs. Pretty much anything you want is on there. That's mostly just because the Switch doesn't have garbage third-party support. The ironic thing now is it's starting to become that way again, because the games that they want to put on there, they can't, because the hardware is not good enough.
僕の番だね。いやどうだコロコロコロや行くよぶっ飛べ逃がすものかどけ行くよ当たれ変わる逃がさぬかそこよどこにやめろ
Actually, DS was kind of... Regular DS did have some JRPGs. Not a lot of new installments, though. There was the Final Fantasy IV remake. There was... had a couple East remasters on there. 3 Tales games. Chrono Trigger. Those are like the big ones, pretty much.
早く蹴りをつけて光の元に急ぐぞ
Was that Golden Sun sequel that nobody liked? Everybody hated that game. I don't know exactly what was wrong with it. Outside of the fact that it had DS 3D graphics instead of the beautiful pixel art, so it looked ugly. I don't know much about it other than that. Golden Sun, that one that's on DS. Not highly regarded. There were a lot of games like that on the DS though, just they didn't want to do pixel art anymore, so you got stuff that looked like that. I remember when that came out. It's like, you know, I don't really like DS graphics because I didn't like N64 graphics. No, it's not that they don't want to take the risk, it's just that they don't care about Tales. It's just something that's been going on for a while. It's just kind of reached critical mass lately. Like, Namco cheaping out on Tales is nothing new. It's just the ways that they do it have been worse. The Tales of Legendia dub is the localization for that is notorious for. They just kind of didn't want to dub the rest of it. And the second half of the game has no voice acting. Even Tales of Symphonia with that, you know, they put the most money into that. The skits weren't dubbed; they were just silent. Like even that far back. Like, it's not a new development at all. Same thing with Vesperia. They didn't bring Troy Baker back because he's too popular for them now. So they just got some guy to do the other half of the lines, which just ruins the dub completely.
まだだ切り刻む逃がさん
Also, people don't know anything about Tales, and can't even fault people for it, because the games are too hard to play. People have misinformed, dumb opinions about, like, Final Fantasy and Persona and all the time, Fire Emblem, but the difference is you can actually play those games without a ramen emulator. I feel like you kind of have to forgive the recency bias around Tales like Arise and stuff, because it's one of the only ones that's accessible. It's not a matter of somebody just being too lazy to play it. Like, you can't play it. It's not available to play.
俺が変わろうこいつ行くぞ
まさか今さらそんなことが私が行くんでしょ
確認を送ったぞ
一刀両断おゆきまだよいい子ですねやっおゆき
まだだ
いい気がする外さないベティさんの様子痛いです本当にみんなが操られていた時みたいだ
気を抜くなとにかくまずは落ち着かせよう
彼女は巨大なコウモリにはならないのねレアちゃんの洗脳の力とはまた違うのかしら
おばあさん洗脳って言わないで目を反省してるのねちょっと流すとこっちが面倒なんだよそんな話は戻って
みんな気をつけてこの本気で来てるわ
おや魚女で緊張するのかい
割れても替えがつく熊の置物と違って私のナイスバディは大事な資本なのよ痛いです
4年だってあれを真正面から食らうと痛いぞ
飛ばすよおゆき飛ばすよ一刀両断飛ばすよ
よくやった今のうちに抑えるんだ
ベティさんお願い
Enemy! Enemy!
生きろどこを見て飛ばすよとへやいい気がするものから飛ばすよそこだ行くよ
Hello.
じゃあそろそろ正門長にも
私も一緒に行くわ 晩ご飯まだだしね。
Indie games? That's a good question. A lot of the ones I'm excited for don't have release dates, so yeah, kind of dead right now. Nothing I'm like super excited for at the moment.
いくよ。やっ。じゃあな。はこれ。逃がすものか。へいやっと。どけ。参ります。はい。行きましょう。よっ。高い高い。はっ。はっ。
まだだ。
そこよ。逃がさない。
I mean, I'm excited for Bushiden, Moondiver. Those are like the big ones I'm excited for. But Bushiden is, seems like they're having trouble making that game. Doesn't seem to be going too smoothly.
みんな戦いの準備を。
I like that they're not committing to a release date, but how are the movesets in this game? Surprisingly deep. It's not as many moves as Tails, but this game has a lot of really cool stuff to it. It scratches that Tails itch that Rise didn't really resolve. I'll say that much. Also, the new game plus for this, which I'm playing right now, is really cool. You get like 3 new characters. You could do solo runs if you want. You could change the party. This game is pretty legit. The first one was not bad. It's good for a first game. It was like the first game that they had made. The first Dust Diver is more like a Muso, where there's like, there's more enemies on the screen than this game, but they're pretty dumb, and like individually they're not a threat. This game, they kind of changed into more of a little bit like Tails in a way. It's more like character action. So there's less enemies on the screen, but they're all equally threatening. You can't just button mash. Yeah, this game is pretty solid. It's surprisingly good. It's a big improvement over the
ユソ
first
様の
one.
言うように。
いやすみません
And the city itself is like Yakuza, so small, contained. It's not out of control. It's not like an Ubisoft game or Breath of the Wild or anything where there's just a ton of just empty space and wandering around and nothing. You can walk around this whole game world in like a couple minutes, but there's lots of stuff to do, which I prefer personally. I'm not really into open world at all. I feel like it just makes things take longer, makes the game boring. This is pretty much set up like Yakuza.
負けろ？バカ言ってんじゃないよ。
I recommend this game. It's on, I think it's on everything now. I don't know if it's on Xbox.
ほら
It's on PS4 and 5, Switch, and
人が
PC.
少ない
It's $50. It took me about 15 hours to finish this game. I cleared most of the content, all the content I could find anyway. So it's not JRPG length, which is a good thing. These guys don't have tons of money or people working on the game, so I think that they really knew their limits. like yeah, we're not gonna add like this big massive open world or anything. No, we're gonna keep it contained, under control. There's lots to do in this game, but it doesn't take long to get through. The dungeon design in this game does get way worse towards the end, though. They start padding things out. There's a lot of backtracking and stuff. It does feel at the end, kind of has that classic video game problem of, like, lol, we ran out of money. But you can look past it. The game is still enjoyable. Playing this game again from the start on New Game Plus, like, the dungeons are a lot better at the beginning. Towards the end, it kind of felt like they were phoning it in with the way they were designed. A lot of stuff just there to, like, make things take longer, which really sucks, but it is what it is. What do you define get in the way? I don't quite know what you mean. Oh no, nothing like Tales of Graces, if that's what you mean. No. No. You see at the bottom there, it says break. That's basically how much break damage something does. So the hyper-armored enemies, how much it'll do. There's actually, like, certain chains you can do that will do a lot of break damage, so, you generally want to do those. But you can also tag, and there's assists in this game as well, so there's lots of cool little combos you can make. Even if the movesets aren't as big as you like, there is quite a bit to do, I would say. What's up, Cyan? How you doing? No, nothing like Tales of Graces. That fucking accuracy stat. They just, like, walk out of the combo randomly. That game's design was just a mess. I like most of the characters. The ones I'm using in the team right now. Other half I don't like playing as much. When you beat this game, basically they give you... This game has humanoid bosses, like Tales as well, that stagger and get juggled and stuff. And they also have, like, the big hyper-armored monsters and robots and stuff, but they give you the human boss characters. They give you the human boss characters, they just let you play as them when you beat the game. So you get like 3 new characters, and they're transparent. They tell you like, look, you know, we basically just tied their boss moves to buttons, which, you know, Castlevania's been doing that shit for ages. They're like, hey, you know, if you like our game enough to play it again, you get 3 new characters. And you get full control over the party. You can have as few or as many characters as you want. You can take the protagonist out. So it's definitely done better than Tales. It's taking a concept that Tales kind of pioneered and making it better. The thing that sucks about Tales games, if you try to do anything resembling a challenge run, is that the character you like isn't available. You know, they're gone. They leave the party. Like, no, in this game you just have everybody all the time. I don't think anybody's really done solo runs for this, but if you wanted to, they make it pretty easy. How much tech does this game have? It's like a mid-tier character action game, so like not DMC, Bayonetta, Assault Spy tier. Below that, there's definitely some aspects of this game that feel jank, but I mean, for an indie game with only 2 installments, it's cool to see somebody even try to make a game like this. That's the problem with how shitty Tales is right now. The condition Tales is in is like, well, there's not really an alternative, you know? Like, if you like turn-based games, if you like strategy RPGs and stuff, like, you know, it doesn't matter that, like, Warcraft isn't that good right now, or StarCraft. There's, like, other games to play. If you like Tales-type games, there's, like, barely anything. So, it's cool that stuff like this exists, and you should definitely support it. That's kind of the problem with how shitty Tales is, the state it's in right now. There's not really anything else they can really play. You don't have the luxury of other genres, even within, like, the constraints of being a JRPG. There's, like, so much stuff you can play. If you like Tales, it's kind of just got the bum end of the deal right now. This game gets close. It does. It gets close. Kind of frighteningly close for an indie game made with a fraction of the resources that the Tales guys have. So This game just goes to show that legacy and how much money you have doesn't mean that, you know, people that have less, they can still be better than you. Which is kind of what indie games have been proving for a while now. You know, Freedom Planet 2 just came out today, and a lot of people say that game is better than most of the recent Sonic games outside of Sonic Mania. That game's made by a small team. It's just for stuff like this, indie games haven't progressed to the point where there's lots of games like this coming out from smaller teams. This game is a good sign. I hope it did well enough that they'll continue. The story does leave it open to a degree, so I'm hoping they'll make another one.
機械と融合した災いとはいえ行動パターンはあまり変わらない。
だが強さがかなり上がった。いつも通り気を抜かずに戦おう。
まだだ。死ね。行くぞ。こいつ。まだだ。
完了。逃がさないよ。
俺が見る限り悪くねえもんだ。
I was already talking about I don't like Final Fantasy. I'm not a Final Fantasy fan. I've tried a few Final Fantasy games and just don't like them. I didn't like 7 Remake. But I also have like no nostalgia for that game. I did not grow up with it, so that's part of the problem. It's not a childhood game for me. Final Fantasy 15, I tried that one as well. Combat in that just felt too automated. Just held the button down. Felt like I was playing some mobile game or something. Some like low-tier mobile game that plays itself. But then I also saw my friends play through that game and the ending was like really depressing, so that made me not really want to play that game anymore. I played it for a couple hours. Like, this shit ain't it, man. Wasn't feeling it. Stranger of Paradise is I probably like the most out of the Final Fantasy games I've tried. I liked it enough to finish it, but that game just has a ton of artificial difficulty. Feels like they didn't learn anything from the first Neo, which had a ton of that artificial difficulty. You just get one-shot by everything. That's what made me stop playing the first Neo. It's just getting one-shot by everything. I wish we'd get away from the design that not allowing the player to make a mistake makes the game more challenging. All it really does is it just makes it take longer for you to learn. There was a game I played called Way of the Passive Fist, which is a very unorthodox beat-em-up. It's really boring to watch. It's not a good spectator game, but that game is pretty exhilarating to play. And what was cool about that game was it allowed you to tweak like how much damage the enemies did and how many checkpoints there were. And I could tell you, I learned how to no damage a bunch of the bosses in that game because I added frequent checkpoints. I got better at the game faster. I'm getting really tired of the design where it's just somebody taps you on the shoulder and you keel over. Like, doesn't it doesn't make the game harder, it just makes it take longer to learn. Like,
ものいくよ飛ばすよ
especially with like last gen load times and shit, where it takes like so long to get back into the fight. Like, you know, just let me get hit a couple times. Let me get hit a couple times. It doesn't make me a scrub. I mean, I played that way in the passive Mist game. I got better at it because there were checkpoints. I learned the game so much faster. It was actually pretty eye-opening. Like, you know, I wish more games were like this. The game is still plenty challenging, but it's not in an artificial way. And with the game letting you just tweak checkpoints as much as you want with no penalty, I got better at that game in like a couple hours. It took like barely any time. Problem with Stranger of Paradise is with the DLC, just everything just one-shots you. And like, that was what was garbage about the first Neo. Past a certain point, like, the armor and the defense stats and stuff just didn't matter. You just got one-shot by everything. It's like, well, why is this even an RPG at this point? It might as well just be an action game with no RPG elements. I'm not saying to make it so that you can just stand there in front of an enemy for 10 minutes and not have to try. There should still be some challenge. But I get turned off when their idea of difficulty is just give everything a couple more digits of health and then somebody taps you on the shoulder and you die. I'm getting tired of that design. That's why I stopped playing Stranger of Paradise. I heard that the DLC for that was exactly what I just mentioned. You just get one shot by everything. That was what was garbage about the first Neo. High-level gameplay for the first Neo, basically, you were required to have quick change maxed. Because it basically turned the game into like a Mario-style health system. It's like everything one-shots you and you can come back. You come back with a quick change. You had to have that on. Otherwise, you'd probably get an ulcer playing that game. It's just shitty design. I'm really surprised how much better the second game was in every conceivable way. I think they did a good job of improving. They had a good formula, it's just the balancing was bad. Artificially hard, not actually difficult. Yeah, you're the second person I've seen that's recommended that game to me. I'll have to try it sometime. It's just, I never think about it because it's on the freaking Epic Game Store. I forget it exists. I'll have to keep an eye on when that's on sale again. I'll give that game a shot, I guess. Yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake I just didn't like at all. I tried to like that game, it just couldn't grab me. The dodge not having any invincibility really triggered me. I really couldn't stand that at all. That was like my biggest complaint. Like, what's the point of the dodge if it has no invincibility? That's what made it feel like more of an MMO to me. It's obviously not that limited, of course, but it kind of gave me that impression. You know, that's how MMOs are. That's how MMOs are. You can't really dodge most attacks, at least like when you're in melee with somebody.
あ、驚いた。ここの崩れよう、貿易センタービルよりすごいね。
ここまで崩壊していると侵入してくる災いの数も増えてるだろうね。言うまでもないと思うけど慎重に進むんだよ。
やっ
相手は
とどめよとどめよ
しまった増援だ
逃がさない倒れなさいはっダンス頑張るかもよっ飛ばすよさあ逃がすものかはっへいやそれ
俺が逃がさないぜそらそらそらそらそら
こいつ
そんなもんじゃ
僕行くよはいよっと飛ばすよ
You gotta be more specific with that
い
question.
なくなるまで
Are you talking about the good PSO2 or the bad one?
逃がすものか
New one or the old
飛
one?
ばすよ
Very different games.
行くよよっ
Not for good reasons either.
そうだ
切り刻む皆さん受けてみろ
For the bad version of PSO2, the new one.
切り刻む
Fighter? Fighter doesn't have those weird restrictions on canceling animations. So,
増える
Fighter feels pretty good in that game. I'll give it that. The other classes feel way worse because you can't cancel out of animations.
よっ
You're glued to animations a lot in that game.
え
In the original game, the
こ
good
の
one,
光景まるで世紀末だな
pretty much any of the successor classes are
僕は人間界に来てから私の知ら
good.
な
I'd
い
argue pretty much anything but
知って
Summoners.
とてつもなくひどい状態という意味だ天気の
Summoners a
休
lot
憩
less
室に
active
置いて
than
る
the
漫画でも
original
あ
one
る
I saw.
ベティちゃんも暇な時に読んでみたら人間界の理解に役立つよ
Towards the end of the game's lifespan, they kind of made the classes from like the beginning of the game. They gave them stuff to take
ま
with
だ
them.
こいつ
了解とせや逃がすものかへや行くよはっ外さないどこを倒れなさい頑張るかよ逃がすものかはっ飛ばすよはっそこだ
DMC 3, DMC 5.
行くよへいやよっ飛ばすよとそりゃはっそこだ
God Hand.
逃がすものか
Bayonetta 1.
よっへいやはっこいつだ逃がさないはっそこに甘いバッチ
えっえっ
やっとはっ逃がさない
いつになったら終わるのかね
僕了解行くよ飛ばすよそこだ逃がすものかいや飛ばすよ危ないよ
Neo 2.
行くよ倒れなさい
The first one, not so much. First Neo is a good example of why video games are cool, because it's like the only medium where the sequel can just be objectively better in every way. Whereas with like movies and comic books and regular books,
逃がすものか行くよ
shit like very rarely true.
こいつね逃がすものか飛ばすよ
Especially these days with like all the Marvel movies and stuff, Star Wars and stuff, where they just run into the crowd.
僕が相手だ
Like video games can consistently be like
逃がすものか
a
皆さん
transition from Neo 1 to Neo 2.
こい
Is
つ
a pretty good example of that.
長が欲しがってたもの
That game was just straight up abusive.
邪魔だ
待ってと了解いくよ飛ばすよそこだ逃がすものかふっと
Transformers, yeah, that's another one. Kingdom Hearts, I'm not too big
こ
on.
んな乾燥したところお肌に悪いし長居はしたくないわねおおベーダネーってやっぱり水生生物だ
Kingdom
から
Hearts, I'm not too big on. I did enjoy the,
もうユモちゃんってば
but I never
い
played the
くら
Final
美少
Mix
女だっ
version,
て
so
お肌の保
that
湿は
probably
大
doesn't
事
help
よ
things for me. I played the original one that they brought out. Let's see, I want to change this move. It's not an uninformed opinion. You're not wrong to think that. The thing about the reboot that I liked, I didn't like most of that game. I didn't like the portrayal of the characters. I didn't like the music. The music was okay, I guess. The story was garbage. The character design sucked. The martial arts weapon and the gauntlets in that game were like the worst. What I liked about that game is my hands didn't fucking fall off playing it. I actually think that control scheme is a lot better. You have access to more of what you want with less finger gymnastics. Playing Dante, it really feels like it was designed for fucking Goro from Mortal Kombat. You need like four hands to play him. That was something that the reboot objectively fixed, is having more access to most of your tools right away. The combat had less depth, of course, but the control scheme was better, which is interesting because Assault Spy, which is a really good underrated character action game that's indie, kind of like what I'm playing right now, that game partially copies the reboot control scheme, and it's a lot better. But yeah, the DMC reboot is a mess. There's a lot of things that are bad about it. The only thing I'd say is objectively better is the control scheme. I feel like if they had the balls to take that control scheme and like add more to it, and not sacrifice the depth somehow, it would be a lot more accessible. That's why they like keep pushing Nero. That's why they keep pushing the other non-Dante characters, because they know it's a huge undertaking to change Dante's controls, and they don't know how to do it without sacrificing depth. That's why Nero and V and Virgil get pushed so hard, kind of like what they do in pro wrestling. Or they push like a younger character over the older one, because like the older one is on his way out, and this fresh-faced guy, you know, they can probably work him to death for the next 30 years. That's kind of what they do with DMC. They've been doing that since DMC 4. Nero, they pushed Nero hard, just because he's a lot easier to get into. His control scheme, I wouldn't argue it was completely simplified in a good way. Mainly the fact that to do any damage with him, you had to change the fire button to the triggers, which was almost as bad as how Dante is, where you just need like 30 fingers to play as him efficiently. He was still, overall, he was easier, he was simpler. The problem was that he had less options. But yeah, they push him hard for a reason, because his control scheme is basically designed from the ground up. Outside of stuff like how the lock-ons and the dodges and stuff work, it's basically like a new take on the control scheme. Yeah, I think they're pretty self-aware with Dante. It's like they don't know how to make it so he still like the deepest character action game, you know, character that you can play as, but without such pants on head clown shoes controls where you need like 4 hands and a fucking PhD to play as him. Yeah, there's a reason why they push him so hard.
どこを見てる
I feel like people don't understand that.
了解飛ばすよ1、2、3いただきいくよ逃がすものかへいや私が行く頼れなさいライト逃がさない行くわやっここに
V is just a good idea, terribly executed. He sucks to play. He's just not fun at all. It feels like the demons don't obey your commands.
行くよ逃がすものか飛ばすよ1、2、3私が行きライト行く
応援かいまとめて片付けてやる
僕の番だね
いやおっと
はっとへやせや逃がすものか受けてみろコロコロコロいくよへや飛ばすよ戦闘準備完了はっそこにどけいく逃がさないそれ外さないはっバッチいくやっ
前方にあるゲート、やはりここら辺も完成エリアになってたか。
なら入れないってことか。
前は運よく通れるゲートがあったな。とりあえず近くで確認してみよう。
戦闘準備完了。君はどうしてそんなことをするの？そうやって頑張るのね。じゃ仕方ないよね。頑張るよ。逃がすものだ。そこだ。行くよ。飛ばすよ。倒れなさい。
How much is Neo The World Ends With You? Is it like $50? Does it ever go on sale? I'd be willing to try it out. I haven't really liked any of the other Square Enix games. 7 Remake I just couldn't stand. I tried to like it, I just didn't. Didn't feel good to play.
いやだから
お姉ちゃんみんなこんにちは。いらっしゃいませ。
ってあんたらか。
Yeah, I don't want it on PS4 though. I'm not a big fan of the PS4. There's so many problems with that thing. That thing could just not run any of the games I wanted to play. It got old after a while. It's a big ordeal to get it to run anything I was even remotely interested in. I have not turned that thing on in months. It's collecting dust. That's why I upgraded my PC instead of, That's why I upgraded my PC instead of getting a current gen console.
秘書として当然です。秘書として当然です。
I'm not even sure if it works anymore. It started making noises a couple months ago, and I just turned it off. I unplugged it. I haven't even bothered to turn it back on. I'll get a PS5 eventually. It's just right now, there's no games on that thing. There's nothing. There's nothing I can't play on PC. Outside of stuff like the new God of War, you know, other than that, which I don't really care for. It's like I just don't really have a really big, compelling need to go play it, go get a new one. It's just too few games. It's no wonder people are so frustrated with the current gen situation. Like, yeah, I don't blame you. It's like, not that many games to play, so... I do think with the new consoles, people kind of they exaggerate how few exclusives there are. The thing about the new consoles is that, yes, most of those games are on last gen, but they run like shit. So, you know, if you want to play the same game in 30 FPS with much longer load times and stuff like that, I mean, you can go ahead, but to be honest with you, the optimal way to play is either on current gen or PC. A lot of those last gen versions are bad too. Like, look at Cyberpunk. Fucking Cyberpunk was like an embarrassment. Everything wrong with the game industry. The problem with Cyberpunk was that they told people that it was designed with the PS4 and the Xbox One in mind. It clearly wasn't. Yeah, people exaggerate that a little bit too much. It kind of bothers me. It's like, yes, it is a problem, but there are a decent chunk of games that they're shitty experiences on last gen. I mean, yeah, you can play them, but like if you coughed up the money for a PS5 or a gaming PC, it would be like way better to play. So.
店長って熊の置物のくせに生意気にもアニメイトの常連なわけ？
本人がイケてない場合はどうなんだ。
足を踏み入れた回数で言えば俺とリー・ウェンって常連店
そっか、ヤーロー店の敵だよね。任せな、死にさらせ。行くよ。
俺が変わろう。切り刻む。行くぞ。
飛ばすよ。
箱だ。せいや。こいつ。
戦闘準備完了。逃がさない。外さない。そこよ。と。逃がさない。
面倒事は嫌いですが仕方ないです。
倒れなさい。どこに焼いて行く。逃がさない。
Hey, good night, man. Yeah, I'm not gonna be on for long tonight. I'm pretty tired. Oh, you have a good night too, brother. Thank you.
何になさいますか？
Oh.
またのお越しをお待ちしております。
敵か。
へいや。飛ばすよ。僕の番だね。当たれ。行くよ。飛ばすよ。はっ。2、3。逃がすものか。はっ。そこだ。行くよ。飛ばすよ。
まだだ。切り刻む。逃がさん。こいつ。まだだ。相手を。
pretty cool that this game is set in Taiwan. It's a very unusual setting for a game. It's either
みんな気をつけて。僕の番だね。逃がすものか。吹っ飛べ。行くよ。逃がすものか。飛ばすよ。はっ。よっ。はっ。はっ。と。よっ。さあ、変わるわ。よっ。はっ。逃がさない。やっ。ここに倒れなさい。やっ。逃がさない。やっ。飛ばすよ。どこを見てる？僕？はっ、了解。行くよ。飛ばすよ。危ないよ。それは逃がすものか。はっ、変わるわ。ちっと逃がさないと。
That's right, I forgot about Dragon's Dogma 2. How am I doing? I'm alright. I'm tired. Probably not gonna be on for long tonight. I think I'm gonna switch games a little bit. I don't want to get burnt out on this. I don't want to get burnt out. Say, playing this game back to back might not be the best idea. I have some other stuff I want to play tonight, especially with something that was announced today, which I'm excited for. I need to beat Ultra Age. I haven't beaten that game yet. I gotta unearth that game from the backlog. Because that's getting a roguelike mode in a couple days. A little less than a week. Playing that the next 2 days. For the home streams anyway.
悪く思う。
僕の番だよ。逃がすものか。そりゃこいつね。飛ばすよ。私が行く。
Yeah, I need to beat Ultra Age, I need to beat Unsouled. Those are like my big backlog games right now. It's pretty much just those. Those probably won't take more than a few streams to finish. They're shorter games. Beyond that, I might start doing retro stuff on home streams too. Thinking about it.
外さない。頑張るよ。受けてみろ。飛ばすよ。 当たれ
私の見たところかなり価値のあるものです。
Yeah, the big Chungus was in here, and he was very articulate and intelligent. It's interesting. Gotta love when have like meme usernames like that, but they're like actually really smart people.
みんな戦いの準備
It's such a big disconnect. Total meme name. I had a good discussion with that guy while I was in here.
かなり価値のあるもの。
Can't judge people by their meme username.
いくよはっはっせ
Some really nice, intelligent people out there with meme shitpost usernames. You'd be shocked. Can't judge a book by its cover. Looks like there's people with intelligent sounding names that have like the intelligence of a soap dish.
さっさと片付けましょう。
逃がすものかと飛ばすよ私が行く家よっはっジャンクはっ
えっ
いただきそりゃ私がやる飛ばすよ
That's just when you have the title on something. You have the title on a game and people still ask you what console it's on. I'm like, dude, you can just look on Google. Or the people that comment on my videos from shit I played like 12 years ago. Like, you don't remember how to do this one specific thing? I'm like, dude, there's probably a guide. I don't remember every minute detail of every single game I play. Like, I have a pretty good memory, but I'm not superhuman. Like, be like, oh, how do you do this thing? This game you played 15 years ago. I'm like, honestly, go look up a guide. Why are you commenting on this 15-year-old video? Like, there has to be something else.
僕の番だねよへいやせな飛ばすよとへいや倒れなさい
店長が欲しがってたものだ。
よっはっ飛ばすよへいや2 3
面倒事は嫌いですが仕方ないです。
私が行く
おっと
とよっはら
おっと
ダンク逃がさないよ上がると僕の番だね飛ばすよはっそこだ
Probably Tales of Arise. That was like probably the worst thing I've streamed. 'Cause I just
逃がすものか飛ばすよ
I didn't like the game. Had its moments of being fun, but
そりゃ
gave it too much of a pass.
逃がすものか
I'm just very passionate about Tales in general.
よと飛ばすよ
Retrospect, I would not have streamed that game. I was very miserable playing it. It's just there were some times where it was fun. Short bursts of being fun. But I hated it, and I was getting agitated If I could turn back time, I would have just, like, not streamed that game. I would have just, played it offline, off camera. I was just miserable playing it. It's just... the way the game was designed really pissed me off, and just the reality of, like, how many copies that game sold, and they're probably gonna shape the rest of the games like that. I was just really depressed. It's just something I'm invested a lot of time into over the years. It's becoming something I'm not sure if I'm really on board with it anymore. I just felt miserable playing that game. I have a low frustration threshold because of my mental illnesses, so I can't really blame the game. But just because I get frustrated at a game doesn't mean that I hate it. At the end of this game, the quality definitely dropped quite a bit, but it wasn't bad enough to make me rage quit. It never once got to that point. But there definitely are some games I played on here, in retrospect, I would just, like... I probably still would have played them, but I would have not streamed them. I would have streamed it without a mic. Just no commentary, so you guys can hear me getting frustrated. You know, we all make mistakes. I definitely should not have streamed that game. I just had a toxic relationship with that game, where it's like I wanted it to be something it's not going to be. Granted, with the mods, I will say the mod that Mawagre made to improve the cancel timings and stuff. Second playthrough was a lot better than the first. The first playthrough was just a nightmare. I don't recommend anybody watch me play that game. I can be a little bit stubborn with games sometimes. I don't know when to quit sometimes. I'll keep playing something, and it's like, you know what, I should have uninstalled this shit, like, ages ago, but... I can be kind of stubborn to a fault sometimes. Like, I wanna see a game through to the end. It's like, nah, man, you should have dropped that game, like, hours ago. The second playthrough, if you want to watch those VODs with the mod, I didn't get upset at the game at all. It was fun. It was fun, it was peaceful, I didn't get frustrated. I definitely regret streaming that game. It happens, though. I don't really sugarcoat my opinions about games. Because I'm tired of all the fake people on here that get sponsored and don't disclose it, which is illegal, by the way. And they hype stuff up so much, and then the game comes out, and everybody doesn't like it, and then they start making clickbait videos about how bad it is. I don't like to sugarcoat my opinion. My problem is that my mental illnesses, I get frustrated really easily, even if it's something I enjoy. Yeah, I should not have streamed that game. I did have some fun playing it. There were some aspects of it that were better than the old games. It's just most of it wasn't related to the gameplay, which is kind of the problem. That's the thing about video games, is the video game can be objectively better than the last installment in the series or the franchise, but sometimes the things that are better are not the gameplay. And especially for the stuff I play, well, if the gameplay is not good, there's not really a whole lot left, is there? That was kind of the problem I had with it. There's a lot of really nice stuff about Tales of Arise in general. The stuff that should have been fixed in the series, like, years ago, and they finally fixed them in that game. It's just the overall package was really disappointing. But even I'll definitely say that game has some positive qualities, for sure. But yeah, I regret streaming it. I should not have. I feel like you guys saw me at my worst playing that game. Shit happens, though. I mean, I don't get paid to play anything on here, so if I don't like it, I don't like it. That's all there really is to it. I'd rather be honest, even if when I get upset like that, I don't like to show myself like that. I'd rather be honest about it than lie. Because I find it increasingly hard to find, like, gameplay stuff that I want to watch for video games. People aren't being honest. You know, they're getting paid, or they don't even really have any passion for the game. It's just they're doing it because it's popular right now. That kind of stuff bothers me.
Machina Blade. Character select.
Well, I hate that. Keep doing that.
Machina Blade. Select your character. Get ready.
Yeah, I've gotten better at that over the years, but I still have my faults. Sometimes I give a game like too much credit. I'm like, you know what, this game sucks. Or maybe it doesn't suck, I just don't like it, which there's a very big distinction between the two things. There are some games that just suck. There are some games that just, like, you know, they don't vibe with you. You don't like them. Sometimes it's better to just cut your losses and stop playing, especially if you're doing this kind of thing where you're showing yourself playing the game online and everybody's gonna hear every frustrated thing that comes out of your mouth. I didn't say any gamer words or anything. Nothing that would get me canceled, but I just didn't like showing myself that dissatisfied with the game. I hadn't really done it to that extent before. You know, it happens. Same reason why people stay in toxic, abusive relationships. They think that it's going to get better. Like, nope. Sometimes you can't turn things around. Sometimes things are just doomed from the start. Even with less serious things than that, like video games. Sometimes your first impression is correct. There are some games that get better if you keep playing them. If you stick it out for a couple hours, the game gets better for whatever reason. There's abilities you unlock, or like the plot starts to pick up, or you know, you get a better handle on the game mechanics. There definitely are some games that I'm like, nah, man, this game's not for me. Or the game's just straight out sucks. I'm getting better at noticing when I'm feeling that way and just like stopping. Yeah, I'm getting better at not doing that, George. I'm getting better at not doing that. Like, I'm not feeling this, I'm just, like, not gonna play it anymore. It's definitely a hard thing for me sometimes. You know, I didn't like Dust Diver 2 the first time I played it, but when I bought the game again, I really enjoyed it. And they patched the game up, like, right when I bought it again, too. They made the game a lot better. But sometimes my first impression isn't correct. I feel like most of the time with me it is, though. Not necessarily saying that those games are bad, it's just that they don't vibe with me. Like, I'm not going to enjoy playing them. Definitely are some games I play that are just straight up bad. I mean, nobody can say they haven't played a stinker before. No matter how good your judgment is, sometimes you're just gonna buy a shit game. I mean, it happens. Yeah, there definitely are times I've been correct. Like, yeah, I should have dropped that game like 12 hours ago. Now, Tales of Arise, I have a very long history with the Tales games, and they've gotten me through rough times, and it can be a bit of a toxic relationship at times. Tales has had really high highs and low lows, and just like any toxic relationship, sometimes you don't realize that you're not being treated properly. I know it's just a video game, but we definitely do have toxic relationships with video games sometimes. We'll give a game a pass, like, clearly don't like playing it, but we'll keep playing it because, you know, I've been playing that series for, you know, a big chunk of your life. In that regard, it is kind of like a toxic relationship. It's like, you know, can't really coexist anymore, but you still try, and sometimes it's to your detriment. And you see people Call of Duty, you know, they do that. Call of Duty fans do that. Call of Duty is... I'm not ragging on Call of Duty as a series, but it has very inconsistent quality. You know, they crap out a Call of Duty game every year, and the quality is, like, nowhere near consistent. People still buy them, because, you know, it's like it's a big social event to play Call of Duty. You play it with your friends and stuff. You co-op the campaign and do multiplayer. Like, Call of Duty as a franchise, despite how successful it is, it's not consistent at all. They put out some really garbage games. But people still buy them every year. I feel less alone. I can be stubborn. I have stubbornness with that too. Some games I buy just because of the legacy behind them, or the personal connection I have to them. But they got me through a really shitty time in my life or something. It's like, nah, man, don't buy that game. Play something else. Wait for the next one to come out. Call of Duty is different from stuff like Tales, where they have different people making them all. So it's not really possible for there to be any kind of consistency. They have to crap that game out every year. no matter what. So, I mean, obviously, the quality is not going to be good. Because they put one out every year and they have different people making them, so... complicates things more than a lot of other game series like Final Fantasy and stuff that have had real stinkers as well, despite being like highly regarded. It's mostly the same people working on those games. Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed, they have like different teams working on them. That's the only way you can put out games of that size like every freaking year. It's not possible to put out a game of that size like every year without stuff like that. Well, the first Call of Duty 4 was big. Call of Duty was a niche series before the fourth one came out. I think changing the setting helped as well. Even before Call of Duty ran it into the ground, World War II was like a really popular setting for games, and not a whole lot that you can do with it thematically. It's kind of the same thing every time. Plus, it's like some of the Wolfenstein games where they have like zombies and shit. Like, it was a pretty big deal at the time that they got rid of the World War II theme, and they went to something, you know, what combat was like more of a realistic approach. Favorite games of all time, most of them I play on here. It's probably the short answer. What's up, man? How you doing? I don't think people realize how niche Call of Duty was before the fourth one came out. People were already tired of World War II at that point. Just very overused setting. It's ironic that they keep going back to World War II. I'm like, you guys are part of the reason why World War II games kind of died out. They've done Call of Duty has done World War II like 8 times at this point. It's kind of ironic. What was the last one? Call of Duty Vanguard? The game looked like it had nothing unique about it at all. It looked like the exact same thing they started out with. I like how it's a big deal that Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed aren't putting out games every year. I'm like, they'll probably be better. They'll probably start being good again. Because it's insane, the concept of putting out games that size with that much content every year. Like, there's nothing else that does that. They have to have 3 teams making the games concurrently with each other to even think of doing that. Like, sometimes a game not coming out a year can be a good thing. There definitely have been times in gaming history where they stop doing that with a series and it doesn't get any better. But for the most part, it's generally a good thing. It's a blessing in disguise. King of Fighters is a good example. King of Fighters was on a pretty sharp decline by the time that 11 came out. When 11 came out, they were like, yeah, we're not going to put these games out every year anymore. We're going to put more time into them. They stopped having the Madden business model. Like, yeah, we're not going to put out a KOF game every single year anymore. We need more time to make a decent game. KOF 11 is actually one of my favorite KOF games. That was the first one. There was a 2-year gap between 2003 and 11. Ironically, KOF 12 was a piece of shit, but after that they really found their footing. And now they're not making so many of them anymore, but the quality is overall better. That was a pretty big deal when that happened, too. People grew up playing those games. And it just kind of became like the original Call of Duty. You get excited when a new KOF would come out. But the quality took a nosedive after 2000, I think. Yeah, you don't need to put these out every year anymore. Put some more time in the oven, you know? That's why no one cares about Five Nights at Freddy's anymore. They made too many of them. Although there have been times in gaming history where they stopped making so many of the games. They put more time between sequels and stuff and they don't get better. Tales is a good example. Tales was an annual franchise like Call of Duty for a good while. They were putting out a game every year, but the quality was just all over the place. It wasn't consistent at all. After Xillia 2 came out, people kind of called that game out because it's basically an asset flip. Like the combat in that game is pretty good, but most of the game is recycled assets. They're like, yeah, we're not gonna do that anymore. We're gonna take our time. So it was like 3 years between installments, and they come out with Tales of Zestiria, which sucked for a lot of reasons. It's not a good game. It's kind of ironic because they tried to have that kind of angle. Like, yeah, we're not gonna make like 3 of these a year anymore. The quality will be better, and then they come back with that. It's like, well, it's not what I would consider to be better. Like, yeah, you have less recycled assets, but the game itself is not better than the old ones. Yeah, I remember the shock when they said that they weren't gonna put out a KOF game every year. It's like they'd been doing that for almost a decade. So became very ingrained in the minds of the people that played the games, kind of like how Call of Duty and Madden and WWE are. This game every single year. If you don't like this one, in 11 months there'll be another one. And they're just like, nope. Realized the quality kind of took a fat dump. Like, yeah, better to take a break at that point. Didn't help that that was like the worst era of KOF because you know, they went out of business. They had other people making them, and the quality just like took a massive nosedive. Uh, 2001 to 2003 weren't made by the same people. 2001 is a terrible game. 2002 is considered one of the better ones, but that game is kind of a fluke. 2003 was okay. And honestly, ever since they started not putting KOF out every year, they've really only released one bad game, and that was KOF 12. KOF 12 was mostly just unfinished. It had like barely anything in it. And 13 was kind of more just like KOF 12 too. Like the real KOF 12. But yeah, their quality quality has been pretty good since they stopped putting them out every year. They've only released one stinker since then. That was like 15 years ago, so that's not a bad track record, really. Yeah, Resident Evil fans don't know pain. Imagine liking Sengoku Basara or Tails right now. I feel like Resident Evil just desperately needs a reboot. I'm surprised they haven't rebooted it yet. The story is just so jacked up. It doesn't even make any sense anymore. Like, it's just like, how does anybody even live in their society? There's fucking like werewolves and shit walking around. There's zombies that run. They're not even like lumbering slow zombies. They straight up run at you with like super speed. How does anybody live? And like they've been through like so many outbreaks and shit in like 25 years. They really need to reboot Resident Evil. I feel like that would give it a shot in the arm. Obviously, it still sells a lot of copies, but like the story is it just doesn't make any sense anymore. There's fucking werewolves running around and like giant mold monsters and shit. Like, I wouldn't say it's rebooted, no. Well, if it was, then the old characters wouldn't be there anymore. Alright, let's see what I feel like playing next. I think I might do like one more game tonight. See what I feel like playing. Well, Street Fighter doesn't come out every year. Street Fighter has adopted the games as a service model, for better or for worse. Street Fighter definitely had the problem that KOF did for a while. They were churning out a lot of games, and like a decent chunk of them weren't good, mostly just because they felt unfinished. The first Street Fighter Alpha is terrible. Street Fighter 3 New Generation is terrible. Like, they made too many versions of the games back then, and they were churning them out so much. X-Men versus Street Fighter to Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, it's like a 9-month difference. They crapped out those games so fast, and you could definitely tell that it was impacting the quality. As Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, they tried to like get rid of the infinite combos and stuff, but as a result, like nobody really wanted to play it because it wasn't really fun anymore. And because the games were so close in release schedule, like people just went back to the old one. And Street Fighter definitely had that around the same time that KOF was starting to decline, a little bit before that. They put out way too many games in too short of a period of time, and a lot of them just felt like early access. The first Street Fighter Alpha had like barely any characters. The first Street Fighter 3 was a joke. I remember when that game came out. It was supposed to be a big deal. That was like the Half-Life 3 of that era, the late 90s. It was supposed to be a huge deal that there was finally a Street Fighter 3. because they made like 6 versions of Street Fighter 2. But then 3 came out, it had like 10 characters. There was barely anything in that game. People went back to the older games pretty fast. Arcade owners were pissed because it was on new hardware. It wasn't on the old hardware. So it was a lot more expensive for the arcade owners to get that game, and then it underperformed. People didn't like it because it had like barely any content. It felt like a big downgrade. At least KOF at the time, they were still like adding stuff consistently. Like the first Street Fighter Alpha and the first Street Fighter 3 were very poorly received. People loved X-Men vs. Street Fighter for what it was worth. It's just they turn those games out really fast too. No one plays Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. Nobody likes that game. That game is a good example of what happens when you try to take all the fun out of a game. You try to take all the fun out of it. It's like, well, you know, maybe the game was more fun when it was broken, you know? Especially if you don't really add anything that, you don't add anything to compensate for all the shit you took out, which is kind of what happened with Marvel vs. Street Fighter. It took out the things people liked, which was the crazy combo system. They tried to nerf it and bring it down, but they just didn't really add anything in exchange. I remember when the first Street Fighter Alpha came out as well. People didn't like that game either. People did like Marvel vs. Capcom. They did like that game. I think that... Actually, no, that was like only like a year as well. Yeah, it was about a year. It had more stuff in it, though. They added new mechanics, so it didn't feel quite as recycled. Marvel 2 is just kind of Mugen. It's just, we're just gonna take all the sprites we have and we're just gonna dump them in one game. When you get older, you realize why that game is the way it is, and the reason it is because they were losing the license to EA at the time. So it's like, we're just gonna crap this game out. We're just gonna crap this game out and try to make some money. Can't patch it, we can't add anything to it. It's like, no, this game's gotta just come out and that's it. Nothing else. No new versions or anything.
I don't need weapons. I am the weapon.
version updated last night. It's on version 7 now, which is a pretty big deal. Finally fixed the game. Finally fixed the game. So I might play some of that tonight with the kitty sitting / retro game stream. We'll see. Now I can actually unlock stuff because the frame rate doesn't tank so much. That was what made me not play that game that much on those streams. But now that that's been mostly fixed, I probably will play some more of that. We'll see. I might decide to just do retro tonight because I'm trying to get through some retro games, and I keep getting sidetracked because I have so many freaking games on there. But yeah, later today I'm going to be starting my backlog. I'll probably play some Dust Diver 2, but I don't want to get burnt out because I still need to make the overview for that game. I feel like that game deserves it. I feel bad that I didn't like it at first, but I really did grow to love that game. I want to put out a good overview for it. I don't want to get burnt out. Pretty much played that like all of this last week. That was like the main game I was playing outside of the kitty sitting streams where I play like retro stuff. Yeah, I don't want to get burnt out too quickly, so I need to finish Ultra Age. I think I'm like halfway through that game, and the roguelike DLC just got announced a couple hours ago, so I want to make sure I got a file ready for that. And I need to finish Unsouled. Those are like the two backlogged games I need to finish. A lot of the other stuff I have, I just didn't like it. I need to finish East 9 as well. Ideally, I'd like to get all that done before next month, because next month is pretty barren until the end of the month. The Bayonetta 3 and Star Ocean 6 come out like within a day of each other. I'll probably play Bayonetta first. Star Ocean 6 looks pretty good so far, but Star Ocean as a series has been in really bad decline since the third one came out, which was like legit like 19 years ago. So it looks pretty good. They've actually shown a decent amount of gameplay. It looks pretty solid. It's going to be interesting if Star Ocean is actually legit better than Tales. It might be in that timeline, because Star Ocean has always kind of been the dollar store Tales. They've had a couple of good games, but pretty much everything that's come out since 3 has been like way worse than even like the really bad, like below average Tales games. Star Ocean 6 actually looks pretty solid so far. But until that comes out, I don't really have too much to play, so I think the second half of this month is going to be backlog. And luckily, the only really long game I have backlogged right now is East 9, and I think I stopped like halfway through that, so probably won't take more than a few streams to get through that. But yeah, I want to go back and finish that game. Ultra Age and Unsouled are like short character action games, so maybe by the end of this week I'll have both of those done. And then from that point, I'll probably just play my usual rotation of stuff, my roguelikes and stuff. A couple of updates for 30XX. I haven't touched that game in a while. I need to go back to that. Blade Assault got some updates recently. Skull got an update like last month. I don't like that game too much, though. Yeah, that's basically it. I'm gonna go ahead and sign off tonight. I didn't get much sleep because I stayed up until like 4 in the morning beating Dust Diver 2 last night, and then I woke up like 2 hours later for the Nintendo Direct, and then I slept for like 3 hours, and that's like the last time I got any sleep. I took like a cat nap earlier, but I'm like, yeah, I got to go back to taking care of my neighbor and her cats today, so I don't want to do too late of a stream tonight. That's going to be it for now. But next stream, probably be some Dust Diver 2, and then I I gotta finish Ultra Age first and foremost, because that's got an update coming. With, let's see exactly what they said. Yeah, it's like a roguelike mode. With, like, new bosses and weapons and mechanics and stuff, so... Yeah, I gotta haul ass and finish that game. So that'll be the next thing I do. I have some other stuff I haven't really started yet. I don't really count games that I haven't started as in my backlog. I think that people take their backlogs too seriously. It's like, dude, if you bought that game for like $10 and you never played it, is it really that big of a deal? I mean, it's no different than like getting drunk or like getting a meal at McDonald's. You know, it's gone. you eat it and it's gone. It goes out the other end, and that's it. I don't really consider myself to really have much of a backlog, because I do play pretty much everything that I buy. It's just sometimes I don't like them enough, or they like promise patches and updates to make it better. And it's like, well, why should I play that now? I'll play it in like 6 months when you make it better. Yeah, I really don't have that much of a backlog. I'm actually pretty diligent about actually at least playing the shit that I buy. It's just I don't always like it enough to finish it, and I'm glad. Tales of Arise, I hated playing that game. I gave it too many passes because it's something in a series that's very important to me. It's gotten me through rough times. I've met good friends through Tales games and stuff, and I should have dropped that game like halfway through. That's really the truth. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go to bed. We'll see if I feel like streaming in the morning. I might start the backlog streams in the morning. If not, it'll be tonight. And there will be a kitty sitting stream as well. Lots of shit to do on that stream. There's PGR. I bought Scourgebringer. I just put an update video for that up about an hour and a half ago. So you can go watch that if you want. When Streets 4 got updated and it's not completely jacked up now. So might not be too many retro games tonight. We'll see what I feel like. Because I'm kind of working on games on those streams as well, but they're kind of separate from what I do when I'm at home. But yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Good night.